Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the security news update for December 24th, 2023, Christmas Eve. For those of you who celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and get to spend some time with your families. In the security and privacy alerts, China's ban on Apple iPhones accelerates. There's no uh, surprise that China would much prefer to sell Chinese-made phones rather than Apple phones, but people like the mystique that comes with an Apple phone. So what we're seeing here is that more Chinese state-run agencies and state-backed companies are telling staff not to bring their Apple phones to work, just leave them at home. So the question then becomes, do people buy two phones, one to have with them at work and one to use at night or on the weekend, given that iPhones are very expensive and you need to have two phone plans in order to pull that off? I'm guessing that it may have a negative impact on sales in China. Um, China is a huge market for Apple, and so it's unclear what they're going to do. But I don't know that they have a lot of say in the matter because it's the government. Next, the Blackcat Ransomware for the Alpha V ransomware group. Um, the FBI seized their website. This is a Russian hacking group, and released a decryptor for current victims. So that obviously has some negative revenue impact for the folks at Black Cat. The Black Cat folks managed to unseize the website and put up a notice that said, affiliates that continue to work with us, we're going to give you 90% of the revenue, and we're just going to take 10% of the revenue. And all limits on what you hack, whether it's a hospital or a nuclear reactor, we don't care. Wherever it exists, fair game. Um, whether they get any takers, whether they're successful, unclear, of course. But if I was running a nuclear reactor, I would be really, really nervous to make sure that they weren't going to be able to get in there. And history tells us that critical infrastructure is not very good at that. So that's a challenge, and it does make me a bit nervous. Um, Next, in the reference section, the NSA just released guidance on software bills of material, something that I talk about all the time, and supply chain risk management. It's really hard to manage your supply chain risk, specifically software risk, if you don't know what's in the software. And that's what software bills of material does. It tells you the ingredients, kind of like an ingredients label on a can of soup or something. So the feds are pushing pretty hard on this. It will happen. It's going to take a while, but to the degree that you would like to know what's in your software can of soup, that would be the way to do it. With software bills of material and start pushing on your vendors, and it'll work with some and won't work with others. It depends on whether the vendors already sell to the government. If they sell to the government, they got to be working on this because they won't be able to sell if they don't. And it won't be perfect at the beginning. The contents won't be perfect at the beginning, but you got to start somewhere. In the software section, um, this is a real challenge for VMware devotees. VMware has deprecated the permanent subscription. I'm sorry, the permanent license model in favor of a subscription model, kind of like what a lot of other folks are doing. The challenge is, of course, if you bought software in the past, you can continue to use it, they say, because that obviously would be a violation of the license agreement if they didn't allow you to use it. But you will get no support and you will get no updates ever. So if you want to run old buggy software, and VMware certainly puts out its share of patches, then continue to use the perpetual license version. Now that's going to cause a couple of things to happen, right? And right now, at least in the beginning, VMware is trying to ease the pain for people who have perpetual licenses by giving them a discount. But that discount will only last for a short period of time. So people need to decide, is it worth it to them? And for some people, it will be. or should I start looking at alternatives? And there's a couple of alternatives. Obviously, you've got a whole bunch of open source alternatives, which if you have the staff to support open source, that's a great solution. And if you don't, then there are other commercial products, some of which have perpetual licenses. So it just becomes a question of, what are you going to do? But at this point, you got to do something pretty quickly because starting next month, you won't get any patches. So this is not something you can procrastinate about. The problem is that Broadcom spent $60 billion to buy VMware. They need to generate a lot of revenue in order to pay for that. And they've already said that they want to go off and increase their revenue from 4.7 billion to more than 8 billion in just 3 years. And the way they're going to do that is by sucking more cash out of their customers. Now, 10 years ago, VMware was the only option for hypervisor. Now, for a lot of folks, there are many alternatives, not the least of which is Microsoft's product, Hyper-V. And for a lot of folks, that's perfectly adequate. Depends what you're trying to do, whether it's adequate enough. If you're a Fortune 500 company, and we got to remember, out of the tens of millions of businesses, there are only 500 Fortune 500 companies. If Hyper-V works for you, then you just you will always have, no matter what you do, the pain of transition. But Hyper-V, for example, will read a VMDK, which is VMware's disk format. So there isn't even, you can just shut down a VM, configure one on Hyper-V, attach the disk drive, and fire it up. Now, reality is it's never as simple as it sounds, but you got to decide. They have not announced prices yet, they being VMware. Obviously, they knew that this was going to go off and upset a lot of people. You have to figure out what you're going to do. Speaking of end of support, shortly, in about 2 years, not quite 2 years, Windows 10 will be at end of life. And the way Microsoft has set things up right now, that doesn't mean they won't change it because they're good at that. There are about 250 million PCs that will not be upgradable to Windows 11. They just don't have the hardware pieces necessary to go do that. Unfortunately, a lot of those live in places like water treatment plants, hospitals, power stations, places like that. And in some cases, they can't be upgraded because the software that's running on them doesn't work on Windows 11. And for others, the people don't have the money, they can't handle the downtime. There's a lot of different reasons why you might not be able to upgrade. On the other hand, it's likely that Windows 10 will continue to have bugs in it. Supposedly, at least in the short term, you will be able to pay a fee, and they haven't announced what the fee is yet because that's Microsoft. For Windows 7 to Windows 10, I believe it was $50 a PC per year. So if you have 100 PCs, $5,000 a year, and they'll give you security patches, nothing else but security patches, might be worth it to you if for some reason you can't change. But that's only going to go on for a couple of years. So now would be a good time to start thinking about what your plans are. Next, in the legal department, Apple has been forced to halt the sale of their very popular Watch Series 9 and Watch Ultra 2 due to a patent infringement lawsuit that they are, at the moment, subject to potential appeal on the losing end of. There's a pulse oximeter in the Apple Watch, which Massimo says violates their patent. The U.S. International Trade Commission agrees with them, and Apple has decided that they don't want the damages to accumulate. Obviously, the damages from when they first started selling those things till now will still be in play. So they have stopped selling it as of Christmas Eve. They've stopped selling it both online and in the stores. And also importantly, if your watch is not under warranty, they will not fix it. If it's broken, it's broken. Now you may be able to find a third party who can fix it, assuming they can get parts, because Apple won't sell them parts. So if you have one of these watches, take good care of it, because it may need to last a long time. And who knows? The simple thing would be for Apple to license the technology, and it's all over. But obviously, they're trying to avoid that. Um, Next, in the legal department, U.S. businesses are complaining violently about having to report breaches in some cases in 48 hours, 72 hours, 96 hours, depending on which regulator you're talking about. Let me give you a different business model. In China, they've just introduced a four-tier cyber incident response protocol: red, orange, yellow, and blue. At the highest level, businesses will have 10 minutes to report by phone to the regulator that they've been breached, and then they have to follow that up within 30 minutes in writing. Um, they also cannot omit or conceal any facts or provide any false information. And you know what happens in China if you do that? If the government decides they don't like you, it's not going to be pleasant, let me tell you. So for those people who are complaining about having to report to the regulator in 96 hours, think about having to report to the regulator in 10 minutes. The fight over FISA Section 702, the bulk data surveillance protocol, that is continuing. The Congress included a short-term kick the can down the road solution to re-up it for 100 days about. It expires now on April 19th. The president signed it. It was part of the National Defense Authorization Act. There are some Republicans who are not terribly happy with their speaker at this point. Not clear whether he's going to get the same treatment as the last speaker. It's possible. Clearly, the Republicans are quite dysfunctional at this point, and not embarrassed to show it. Next, in the breaches department this week, VF Corp, which is a brand name that owns North Face and Dickies and Icebreaker and a whole bunch of other brands, said that they got hit by a cyber attack. It disrupted both their retail and online sides of the house. It happened 2 weeks before Christmas. You can't get a worse time than that for a retailer. They are working to get their systems back online, and they're also trying to create some workarounds so they can continue to generate sales at this point. Not clear exactly when they're going to be back, but not good for them. Next, the mortgage lender and servicer, Mr. Cooper, originally said that they were hit by a cyber attack that affected about 4 million of their current and former customers. Now they say that it affected all 14 million. This is one of those things where you report early, you have one set of information based on the best information that you have. So, nobody's going to beat them. Well, maybe they will, but nobody should beat them up for doing that. It's just kind of the nature of the game. But now they say it affects all of their current and former customers. And previously they said bank account financial information was not compromised. Now they say it was. And for former customers, they may not have a good way to contact them. So, there is, in most state laws, there's an alternate mechanism, which is, buy online ads. It is not adequate just to post it on your own company website, because, if someone doesn't have a loan with Mr. Cooper, they have zero reason to go look there. So, they have to go to things like newspapers of record, like the New York Times, Washington Post, or so they're going to buy an ad, which is not going to be cheap. And it's not great for their reputation, although I will say that they are a bit challenged in the reputation department as it is. But this is something to think about when you have a breach. You're keeping old data, you're keeping it spinning around, which you tell people not to do, and then you get hacked. Now you have to figure out a way to reach those folks. Um, hacking critical infrastructure, not just limited to the United States. Uh, Apparently, Ukraine hacked Russia's Rosvosdennikal. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Water company. It was in retaliation for Russia's attack on Ukraine's largest mobile phone company. They deleted about 50 terabytes worth of data, including backups, and then they stole about a terabyte and a half of data just to look at it, see what the hell is going on inside there. Um, as of the beginning of this past week, they were still inoperable. So it's not just our critical infrastructure, which is a good thing, um, because there is a risk of if they go after us, we go after them, and they may not like that. Next, Kansas City area hospital, the Liberty Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri, got hit by a ransomware attack. They had to transfer some patients out of the hospital, cancel appointments, and basically revert back to the 1960s when they were keeping charts on pencil and paper. The challenge, of course, is that other than what may exist in the staff's head, there are no medical records available, and so treating people becomes really dicey. Um, you hope you know what meds they're allergic to, for example, but do you really remember that accurately for all the patients in the hospital? The hackers say they've stolen all of the data, and the hospital had 72 hours to pay, or they're going to start publishing it. We don't know whether they have or have not, but we will see. Um, Next, Microsoft is building a new Windows printer system. This is a good thing. For those of you who follow this thing, Microsoft has been a tad bit challenged, I think it would be fair to say, over the last year or two, to try to keep the Windows printing subsystem working and secure. And it seems like you get one or the other. They patch it and they break it, or they don't patch it and it's not secure. So they've got something new that is in sort of beta, I guess, at this point, called the Windows Protected Print Mode. Uh, and it's disabled by default. But once it becomes generally available, you can turn it on. You'll see what printer drivers it breaks, because the whole point here is to stop some of the easy for me to say, shenanigans that some of these printer companies have been doing, and that will break printer drivers, guaranteed. So if you can use it, then it will definitely be much more secure. Next, Visa has released a new AI-based fraud detection system. It's not really AI-based, not even, they don't even call it AI-based, but the media is calling it AI-based because that sounds cool. And it should cut down on fraud. Right now, it's being used to detect fraud in tokenized transactions, which is a limited subset of the billions of transactions. But if you're a merchant and you use tokenized transactions, you probably ought to talk to your bank to make sure that you know when this thing is coming online. Hopefully, in theory, the only transactions it will reject are the bad ones, but it'd be good to know when it's coming online. In the financial services arena, last month, you may remember Fidelity National Title went down for a couple of weeks. It delayed a whole bunch of mortgage closings, home closings, and realtors and title agents were really trying to get very creative in terms of how they close deals. I don't know whether people lost houses as a result of not being able to close a deal. It wouldn't surprise me. It probably cost them money. There are already multiple class action lawsuits. Well, this month, it's their competitor, First American. This comes right on the heels, literally like 2 weeks on the heels of First American paying New York $1 million fine for their last screw up. And so now they get to pay another fine. We shall see how long it takes them to recover. The good news is that they have a lot of resources, but between, Fidelity, First American, Mr. Cooper, and a whole bunch of others, the financial services sector is definitely under attack. And if you're part of that, you're a mortgage lender, mortgage broker, a registered investment advisor, a bank, anything like that, now would be a good time to kind of review your security practices and make sure that they're adequate. If you need help with that, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you with that. And lastly, in the security news bites, um, people are using low code, no code um, application generators, and that includes AI based application generators like Microsoft Copilot. And that does not mean the code is secure. And especially when you think about the fact that in many cases, the people who are using those tools, the low code, no code tools, are not software development professionals. And so they don't necessarily understand the security implications of what they're doing. So it would be really useful to make sure that you understand the security ramifications of using low code, no code apps. Um, as if Twitter didn't have, excuse me, as if Twitter didn't have enough problems, the EU is now investigating them for Digital Services Act violations. We shall see where that goes. In theory, the law doesn't come into effect in the EU until February, so they can investigate now because they can always investigate, but they can't do things like issue subpoenas and whatever until February, and they certainly can't impose fines. And if Twitter cleans up their act between now and February, which I doubt, then they probably wouldn't be able to find them anyway. Next, Comcast or Xfinity, depending on what you want to call them, issued a mass password reset the other day. They didn't say why. Now they've admitted that they lost the data on 36 million customers, which is not good. And the data is relatively limited, but enough to cause pain for people. Next, Anthropic AI, who is the vendor that makes the Claude AI agent, a competitor to ChatGPT, says that it will defend customers against copyright claims, uh, indicating that they think that's a serious problem. T-Mobile continues a tradition of security breaches, at least one a year. This one is with their Mint subsidiary. And it's enough information to allow someone probably to do a SIM swap more than likely successfully. So it's a tradition. They do this. In the last 5 years, they've probably had at least a half a dozen breaches that I'm aware of. So think about that when you use T-Mobile. And next, and this is sort of scary, researchers are finding child sex abuse material, CSAM or kiddie porn, in AI training data sets. We know that they're sweeping up everything that they can sweep up in order to make these training sets. This one is a particular training data set is one that's used by a lot of folks. So that makes it scary. Hopefully the AI will not spit out anything that actually looks like kiddie porn in the output, but who knows? And even possessing kiddie porn is a illegal nightmare for people. So for those of you who are using that particular 5B database, which is the one with 5 billion images in it, you got to look at what do you need to do to protect yourself. And obviously, any tool that was trained on that data set, you need to make sure that it's not going to spit up CSAM, because you will be in a world of trouble if you do. With that scariness, that's all I have for this week. Until next time, thanks for listening. Stay safe. And if you get some time off for the holidays, enjoy your time off. Take care.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.